Brooklyn, and today I'm with Susan, who's up in Massachusetts.
Hi, everyone.
Thanks
Nice
so
to
much
be
for
with
joining
you.
me. Thanks for joining me today, Susan.
My pleasure.
So, like always, this is live, so any questions that you have, please put them in the chat and anytime during our conversation. Also, if you're listening now, say hi to us. Let us know that you can hear us, where you're listening from, and also how you take your coffee. Because, of course, the show is called Coffee with Entrepreneurs, and not everybody drinks coffee here, but lots do. And so we're going to be talking about coffee and careers and lots of things like that. So Susan is a career coach. And so today is a really extraordinary opportunity because you're going to be able to ask questions about what to do if you're looking for your next step, especially in light of COVID. Susan has a lot of really great insights on that. So we will get started in just a couple of minutes here. So welcome everybody, get settled, and think up, what would you ask a career coach if you had the opportunity to, because you have the opportunity to today. So how is it outside in Boston today?
It's actually beautiful here today. It's in the 80s, but the humidity is low.
Oh, that's good.
Which is really good, yes.
Yeah.
Our weather is generally tracks pretty closely to New York.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit cooler, so.
Yeah, it's about 85 here today, I would say,
Yeah.
and it's not too much humidity. I was outside this morning, sun was shining and everything, so
Yes.
so I'm glad you guys are having the good weather as well.
Yes. It's been a really hot summer here.
Yeah.
Very unusual.
Yeah. Are you able to get out and about, during COVID?
Yes. So, Boston, the frequency of cases is fairly low. Our governor, like in New York, has been very vigilant.
Yeah.
And I live in a community that's fairly rural. I have a mask in my pocket wherever I go.
Yeah.
It's kind of what you do.
Right.
But I have beautiful walking trails all over the place, and I have a dog, so I have to go out and walk.
Nice.
Yes, she gets me out. And hopefully you won't hear her barking in the background.
Oh, well, that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm an animal lover, and sometimes my cat joins us.
Okay.
So,
my dog is on the other side of the door, so I don't think she'll be joining us, but if she does, she might pop in.
That's okay.
Yeah.
We welcome pets on Coffee with Entrepreneurs.
Okay. I'm a pet lover. Yeah.
So, just a reminder, everybody, let us know where you're listening from. And if you have questions at any time during this, write your questions in the chat. If you're listening after the fact, you can write your questions as well. And of course, we'll be jumping in later on to interact with people. So, Susan, welcome. How do you take your coffee?
So, first of all, I'm a coffee lover. I'm a coffee fiend, and I'm a coffee fanatic.
Yes.
I cannot start the day without coffee. I don't know if that has to do with my being from New York, but I take my coffee with cream.
Nice.
No sugar.
Mm-hmm.
And I grind my beans, and I brew my coffee fresh every day, unless I walk to Dunkin' Donuts, which I do sometimes.
That sounds amazing. Good for you for having fresh coffee every day. That sounds like a wonderful way to start,
Yes. Yes, the coffee pot gets set up the night before, and it goes on automatically. So
nice. Do you find that, because I know I find this as a fellow coffee fiend, I find that I think better, and if I've started my day without it, I don't feel good until I have my coffee.
I am a nasty, nasty person to be around if I haven't had my coffee. Ask anyone who knows me. So that probably says it all. So. And since I have a puppy and I'm up between 6 and 6:30 every morning, that's when I have my first cup of coffee. So.
Wow. So you're an early riser too.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. And so, for those of you just tuning in here, it seems we have somebody from South Wales watching,
Saw that.
which I love. Last week we had somebody from both Australia and India at the same time. So
Awesome.
I love these international conversations. So thanks for joining us, Dr. Paul. So Susan is a career coach, and what you do nowadays is even more needed, right? There's never been sort of a more urgent time to have some guidance when it comes to your career. How has business been for you these days?
So, business is quite busy these days. A lot of people, unfortunately, are losing their jobs, not through any fault of their own.
Right.
Excuse me, but because of COVID, and certain industries have been very badly affected, and people want to know what to do. So I've been teaching a lot of workshops for people who have recently lost their jobs, and just trying to help people find direction and pick up the pieces when they find themselves in that situation. So it's been quite busy.
Yeah. What have you seen in terms of, what are you seeing lately? Because I know at the beginning of COVID, nobody really knew what was going to happen, right? Lots of people were getting laid off. Lots of people were on unemployment. What have you seen recently?
So I'm seeing two things, actually. At the beginning, I think everyone was in shock, in the March and April time frame. Everyone was in shock and everything was really on hold.
Yeah.
Nobody knew what to do. So I'm seeing that layoffs are continuing. And I'm seeing it across industries. In the Boston area, the primary industries are healthcare and higher education. But I work across all industries. So I work with people in finance, higher education. I said healthcare, so that also includes biotech and pharma, as well as financial services. So as much as I'm seeing layoffs, I want to give people hope. I'm also seeing hiring because after March and April, there was a pent-up demand where there was no hiring going on. It was really put on hold. But now into June and July, hiring is starting to pick up again because where there was a need, organizations just couldn't put hiring on hold forever. So I'm seeing people get jobs, and that's the bright side of this situation. Now, I just want to clarify that that's in certain industries. I mean, if you are in the hospitality industry, for example, or the airline industry, you're not seeing that. Yeah. And you're not going to see that. So I just want to be clear.
Yeah. And you're right, because a lot of these industries just overnight, have been decimated, right?
Yes.
Airline, the entertainment industry,
yes.
Restaurants, and,
yes.
and anything to do with people needing to gather, right? Anything to do with travel, anything to do with anything like that. What industries are you seeing do really well right now?
So technology is doing well. Biotechnology is doing well because drug development continues no matter what. Financial services is continuing to do well. I mean, in certain areas, like I'm seeing layoffs in branch banks, for example. I mean, how many people are going into their local branches to do banking when we have online, banking today? So I'm seeing layoffs there. But one of my clients who does marketing in financial services just got hired in July, and she had a job that was put on hold in March. And she followed up with the employer every few weeks, religiously in a very, very nice way so that they didn't forget about her. And in June, the employer came back and said, Are you still interested in completing the interview process that was put on hold when COVID hit? And she did, and in early July they made her an offer. So
Wow.
yeah, it was great. It was really
Wow.
great.
So in terms of following up, then you're seeing that's helping, right? Like in terms of just kind of sticking with it and.
Following up is absolutely critical, and I would say to anybody that has applied for a job and hasn't heard back, following up is really important. But when you follow up, don't make it all about you. Make it 2/3 about the employer and 1/3 about you.
That's
so
really smart advice.
what is it that you can do for the employer? And with this particular individual, she would stress about how much she appreciated meeting the team, what she felt she could do to help them, and just followed up during COVID to see how they were doing.
Right.
So she just stayed on top of their minds and reinforced why they liked her so much.
That's really smart.
Yeah.
That's really smart. And these days, everybody's going through COVID, right? This is one of those things where it's universal. There's nobody that's not affected by this. So that's a question that you can ask almost anybody,
Absolutely. And that's where networking, networking during COVID becomes so important. When people were traveling and getting on planes every day and even traveling to go to their offices, they didn't necessarily have as much time for networking. But everybody is home now. They're working from their homes. And, if you ask someone for 10 or 15 minutes for advice, because you're looking for a job or you want to change careers and you want information about a new industry, most people are going to be very willing to give you that time because everybody's stuck at home. And everybody also understands what it's like to have lost a job or know someone who has lost a job.
Right.
So COVID actually offers an opportunity to reach out to people and use a format like Zoom or FaceTime or something else like that to reach out to people and try to have those conversations.
That's really smart. I want to talk a little bit more about networking, but first we have a question.
Yes.
How do I get my purpose/mojo back after many years I'm just not enjoying my life or work? Where do I start to look?
Oh, that's a really, really good question. So when I work with a client that's in that situation, I have them start by making a list or going back in time to think about what they used to enjoy doing. It doesn't have to be in the present day, but what is it that you used to love? Because in peeling back those layers, you may find, what is it that you used to like that maybe you got away from? When I start working with a new client and they're not sure what they want to do next, I ask them a series of questions. And one question I ask them is, to tell me about a time that, they felt they were really thriving. What were they doing at that time? And what can they recall about those situations? What strengths did they feel that they were tapping into?
Yeah.
So that's one question. And also, if money weren't an object, what do they see themselves doing in the future? So those are some questions that I suggest that you ask yourself, to start to think about where your purpose might come from. What have you done in the past that has given you meaning? And also, in your job, are there certain aspects of it It could just be little slivers or slices that you do find meaningful, even though the gestalt of it, the whole thing may not be satisfying. But are there little bits and pieces that are worthwhile or are meaningful? And I just want to say it's a process.
Yeah.
You don't come to that answer overnight, but you have to keep asking the question and talking to people who know you to try and find those answers. So I hope that helped a little bit.
That's great. That's fantastic. So just a reminder to everyone watching that if you have a question for Susan, anything, all things career coaching, to type them in the chat and we'll get to them. But I want to get back to networking because, like you said, COVID presents this really unique opportunity, and I've seen people do it really, really well. And I've seen people kind of shy away from it. What are some things that you've seen people do well in networking during this time?
So I can talk about some of the things that I've done that might be useful for other people. So first I want to say that I'm a fairly introverted person.
Yeah,
and I'm saying this because networking, if you're introverted, is not the easiest thing in the world to do.
Yeah.
And I just want to put that out there because if you're extroverted, you get your energy from being around other people. And so, just reaching out, picking up the phone, whatever it is, extroverts love that. And in fact, COVID for them, for extroverts, is really tough.
Sure.
Really tough. Because, they're the huggers of the world. And, I think introverts can do a little bit better in COVID because we don't mind our alone time.
Right.
So, one of the things that I found helpful, and I'll say this if there are any entrepreneurs listening, is I joined a business networking group. And in this business networking group, we formed a subset, and it's kind of like a mastermind group. So in this group, we decided that a small subset decided that they were going to meet every other week. The first thing we did is we just got to know each other personally, who we are, what are our families, what are our interests. I mean, from the ridiculous to the sublime.
Sure.
And, really funny, I told a story to this group, and I'll share with the audience that Donald Trump's niece, who recently wrote the book, was my student when I first started teaching music.
Wow. Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So, this was one of the little things that I shared that, because I'm from New York City, I'm from Queens, and she happened to be my student when I started out. So we got to know each other, and then we decided that what we wanted to do is, since we're all entrepreneurs, we wanted to help each other grow our businesses. And so that's now what we're beginning to do as entrepreneurs, but we self-selected each other in this group. And I have to say it was a little uncomfortable at first, kind of reaching out to people that I didn't know. But I have found that putting myself out there and then having individual conversations, with the specific, and they're all women, it happens to be all women, was really, really helpful because one of the things I'm working on is redoing my website. And I mentioned to the group that one of the things that I do as a career coach is I help people with their branding, but I'm not good at doing my own branding. So I happened to mention that to the group, and they said, "Oh, we'll help you. We'd love to do that." I'm like, "Oh, here's a group that's going to help me with my messaging and my own branding."
Right.
So, I've also been reaching out to people in my network that I haven't been in touch with in a long time. So I'm making a deliberate effort, once or twice a week to send a note to someone that I haven't spoken to in a year or maybe two to say, "How are you? Let's set up Let's set up a phone call or a Zoom call. And you never know what comes out of those
Yeah.
conversations. Because what I want to say about networking is if you're looking for a job or if you want to make a transition, it's usually not your very closest contacts that help you,
Hmm.
but it's the more diverse contacts that tend to offer the most help. And that's what research bears out. So those are,
That's great advice. I love that, and I love the idea of having sort of an unofficial mastermind. You join a group, and then maybe you have a subset of people, and maybe one of them might know somebody, right? So then there's that
exactly.
law of the what the research is showing, right? It's the second level connections.
Or the
Um,
third or the fourth.
right,
Yes.
right. That's awesome. I think that's really really great advice. And I mean I'm introverted, and I've found that this time I'd rather talk to somebody over Zoom than in person that I haven't met before, right? So
If I go to a large in-person event,
mhm.
I have an anxiety attack
Yeah.
beforehand.
Oh,
So
I'm sorry. I mean,
I've
same.
gotten used to it.
Yeah. I mean, same. It's anxiety producing to
Yes,
do that, and
yes,
and you sort of learn your way around it. But Zoom and this time presents kind of a unique opportunity for introverts. So I appreciate that. Um, so what can someone do if they think they're in danger of losing their job, or if they have been laid off? What are the first things that you suggest that someone like that do?
okay. So if you think your job is at risk, and even if you don't think your job is at risk, you should always be thinking about your career and and what you can do to protect your career
Hmm.
because the days of employers and loyalty of employers is gone forever. I mean, it used to be there many years ago. It doesn't exist anymore.
Hmm.
So there are a few things that you can do. Number one, keep your branding up to date. What do I mean by that? Make sure your resume is up to date. And what you can do is, when you're employed, on a daily basis or a weekly basis, write down the things you accomplished that day and that week. Why? Because you're going to need them for your resume. And if you are going to wait until your resume needs updating, you will not remember
Right.
what you accomplished a month ago.
Hmm.
So just keep writing it down as you accomplish something so that you have a little, where you keep it, it doesn't matter. You can keep it on a spreadsheet, you can keep it in a document. It just wherever it is, keep track of it. Secondly, keep your LinkedIn profile up to date.
Hmm.
And third, develop content.
Hmm.
So I was just talking to a retained search recruiter the other day. For those of you who use recruiters or who have used recruiters, and she said something very interesting. She said, in the 3 years that she's been doing retained search, so that means working with, top level executives. She said everyone has had a failure.
Yeah.
So that does not bother her. She said, as long as someone can explain what happened. She said, but what sets people apart is if they share their ideas. So
Yeah.
if one of the things you can do on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn makes it so easy, is write articles on LinkedIn. Or at
Hmm.
least, if you've read an article that you think is really relevant to your field, share it on LinkedIn with your own comments.
Right.
Because that way, somebody who is following you on LinkedIn or is connected to you on LinkedIn will see you as a thought leader.
Yeah.
And that's something that you can do when you're, if you're worried that your job is at risk. It's a way of enhancing your own brand. So somebody sees, oh, this person knows what they're talking about. Look at what
Hmm.
they just posted on LinkedIn. and look at their profile. They have recommendations, or they have endorsements, or so. Those are some things that I would recommend doing.
And I love that you brought up LinkedIn, not just because we're on LinkedIn Live right now, but from a very basic standpoint of the algorithm, I get a lot of people who come to me and say, well, why is posting important? Isn't that a waste of time? No, actually, you get 15 times more views on your profile if you're posting content than if you're not, because of the way the algorithm works. Right. So because there's so much focus on content nowadays, especially on LinkedIn, that's how you get views to your profile. So on a very basic level, it's really important. And additionally, once people go to your profile, if just like you said, if you've posted some comments, or even if you've created your own article or posted someone else's article, then you're seen as a thought leader.
Right.
So that's really smart advice. What have you been doing during COVID? Have you pivoted your business in any way, or is it sort of business as usual for you?
So my business right now is all online, Zoom calls. And I mean, that's fine. I really like seeing people face to face and meeting them face to face, and I miss that aspect of my business. But I think that from the perspective of what my clients get from the experience, I think it's working fine.
Yeah, sure.
I'm trying to pivot my business more to online learning. So I'm actually working on a course now on interviewing. So this is on a platform that's a new platform that is audio only it's called Knowable. I think you may be familiar with it,
yeah.
Marie, but for people that are not, it's a new platform called Knowable.fyi, and it's a new platform for people that want to do learning without the video,
right.
Which I think is very cool, because not everybody has access to video all the time. So
right.
I'm in the final stages of doing one on interviewing called Ace the Interview.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I hope to have it done later this week or early next week. So
that's awesome.
That's been a great learning experience for me. I had to set up a studio in my closet to avoid noise distortion, which was an interesting experience, but I've been enjoying it.
That's great. That's great. And so it's knowable.fyi.
Yes.
And I've put it in the little caption here. So for those of you who are watching or tuning in or watching later, that will be available soon, which is awesome.
Probably September is my guess.
Yeah. And I think that's, it's a course that people need right now, because, for those of us who either, maybe we're looking for a job or we've been laid off, right? The job search is more important than ever.
Right. And building this course, I actually had to figure out what to leave out of it. Because as I was building it, it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Right.
Until the point was I said, okay, I have to provide the basics of what people need, and maybe there'll be a part two. So this is really the basics of what people need to ace an interview. So stay tuned for that.
That's great. So, and the other thing is that you have a LinkedIn newsletter.
I do.
So if you visit Susan's profile and go subscribe to her newsletter, it's called Get Hired Now.
Yes.
And what sort of things are you talking about in your newsletter?
So what I talk about in my newsletter is really what's relevant in the job market right now. So some of the things you mentioned, Marie, like what to do if you suspect that your job is at risk. I recently published a newsletter on what to do if you've gotten laid off. So those are, two subjects that I recently published. And one of my upcoming topics will be how to deal with executive recruiters for those people, at that level who, who want to get the attention of executive recruiters. So it's all about the here and now. I will also talk about job changing in the time of COVID, because there actually are opportunities for changing jobs during this time of COVID. So that's another topic that I will be tackling in the next few months. So I'd love for you to subscribe. That would be awesome.
That's great. So what advice do you have to somebody who, whether they're a job seeker or an entrepreneur, or maybe making that transition or not, what advice do you have to someone who is looking to make a pivot during this time?
So one thing that I have found, and I tested this with some thought leaders in the industry, when I wrote an article on this topic for Fast Company, is that, I'll say a few things. One is, what I'm seeing in my own clients is that something has happened during COVID, and also what's happened after the death of George Floyd is that something has broken open in people where they're not willing to settle for the status quo anymore.
Yeah.
So if you have had an idea of a business that you want to start, or a change that you've been putting off making, and you have the financial wherewithal, I mean, that's key. I want to put that, out there. You have to have the runway, as some people refer to it. Then go and do it. I'm working with someone now who is very senior in healthcare and gave up a very high six-figure income to develop a very creative kind of new idea in how to train medical residents.
Wow.
Using nature. And she, stepping away from that large an income was not easy.
Sure. Oh
but
my gosh.
She said, this is my calling, and this is something that I have to do now. I'm working with someone who was recently laid off from a major public radio station. I won't name the name. And he is using the time to help journalists of color to get known in the industry, because public radio is male and white.
Yeah.
And he happens to be male and white, but he wants to be there for Black and brown journalists who want to break through racial barriers.
Wow.
that have. And so, I mean, that's not what he was doing before he got laid off.
Right.
So those are just so go for it. If you have the financial wherewithal, I would say go for it, because recruiters are going to be much more flexible about the changes people make these days due to COVID.
That's good to know. That's really good to know. That's a positive thing, that recruiters are going to be more flexible now.
Yes, they will be.
That's fantastic. So what should I have asked you that I haven't asked you?
I guess how to get in touch with me. So you can get in touch with me on LinkedIn, obviously, Susan Peppercorn. I also have a website, Positive Workplace Partners. You can subscribe to my newsletter there, or my LinkedIn newsletter, as I mentioned. And, feel free to shoot me an email, if you have a question, just let me know, or link to me on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear your questions and how I can be of help.
That's fantastic. So, reach out to Susan, and if you have other questions, you can also post them in the chat, in the comment section, and we'll be looking for the next couple of days, and of course we'll answer questions after the fact. That's fantastic. So, what have you made any pivots recently?
Have I made pivots?
Yeah.
I've become a better cook,
Nice.
a new dog owner.
Hmm.
Um, I think my biggest pivot is trying to stay positive, really. I
Hmm.
think this is a really challenging time,
Yeah.
and I just want to acknowledge that. I think it's hard. And so my pivot is really to try and stay positive, to try and do something positive. I've recently started a gratitude journal, which I have not done for many years. But all the science, I have a background in positive psychology, and all the
Hmm.
science shows that expressing gratitude, especially in writing, really makes the person who expresses the gratitude feel so much better.
Hmm.
So I have recently taken this up again because, in spite of the fact that things are difficult, there's a lot to be grateful for. So that's one of the pivots that I've made, is to go back to something that I used to do that I haven't been doing recently.
That's fantastic. I love that. You totally practice what you preach, you know.
Well, I
That's
haven't been, but I am. But I'm going back to it.
yeah. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure.
Always great to talk to you, and I think people are going to find, what you have to say really, really valuable. So
Thank you
thanks for
so
being here.
much.